Hello, I'm Paul Beckwith. This is the second part of the Washington Post article that said, claim that jet stream crossing equator is climate emergency is utter nonsense. So did Beckwith really screw up here? This is part two. By the way, look at this diagram here. Can you tell me which one is the polar jet stream and which one is the subtropical jet stream, like especially over here, where they dip so deeply? It's not a clear distinction between which one's the polar and which one's the subtropical. That's theoretical. You know, you get them nice and separated. The jet stream here is fractured. There's vortices all over. This is not usual behavior, I argue. Anyway, let me get the lights here. So continuing from, like I say, this is the second part. So continuing from the first part, Ryan Mao, he says that cross-equator flow is totally normal and not evident of a joint hemispheric jet stream. And he talks about it being a seasonal transition in the west, from the monsoon. Of course, we're talking about different things here because, yes, there is some leakage across the equator when there's a monsoon. The monsoon, the air is heated over the land, say in the summer. So it rises, hot air rises, it creates a void or vacuum underneath, lower pressure area. So air is pulled in from the ocean, very moist air, and then it will rise up and form the clouds and precipitation, forming the monsoon. And that air can be pulled across the equator. It's very slow, it's widespread in a wide band. I mean, what I'm talking about here is something that is quite different here. I mean, I'm talking about a passage across the equator that's normal to the equator. This is more like a monsoon type thing over Africa and over India, where the flow is almost parallel to the equator. This is totally different here. So getting back to Ryan here. So what does Ryan have to say? What has he said in the past about some things? He's a senior meteorologist. Yes, he has a doctoral degree, so he really knows his stuff, right? Because if you have a doctoral degree, you know everything, and if you don't have it, then you don't know anything, right? According to this type of logic. So what does Ryan have to say? Well, so this is what his doctoral degree lets him say. No effing clue what he's talking about. He calls warmest physics prof Michio Kaku. By the way, this is Climate Depot. This is Mark Morano's site. Need I say more? Anyway, he calls this guy a festering wound on the field of meteorology. For Kaku, he was blaming the excess heat in the Arctic on the record cold and snow over North America, I believe, a few winters ago when it was bitterly cold. And it was because the jet stream was coming down very far and was persistently locked over North America. And this is, clearly what Jennifer Francis's work shows. So what does this guy say about Jennifer Francis, who's also quoted by the Post? So he said, the festering wound thing on the field of meteorology, that's pretty impressive because Kaku says we think harsh winter is due to global warming. Okay, it didn't say if Kaku replied to this ad hominem attack. Kaku has no effing clue what he's talking about. Unstable jet stream, So this is an unstable jet stream denier, Dr. Ryan Mao. So, clearly he must be saying the same things about Jennifer Francis, I would think. How could somebody supposedly so learned sound so doltish? I mean, what is this guy? Is this like a locker room bully? Talking about people like this, talking about... here's what he says about Bill Nye. I must apologize to Bill Nye. He's number 2 most egregious butcher of meteorology and climate science. So new rankings come out weekly. So let's see what his rankings are. Let's see who he puts on there. I mean, anyway, this guy, it looks like it looks like media can go to this guy and he can say nasty things about anybody, right? So that's this guy. Meteorologist. But here's the winner. This is the winner. Sometimes the flow connects and makes it look like a larger flow structure. Roy Spencer. Let's see who Roy Spencer is. Many of you already know. Climate misinformer. Google skeptical science Roy Spencer. Climate misinformer Roy Spencer. Same thing. Different article. Different article. So all kinds of articles on him through the years. How misinforming he is. Where are we? Climate scientist debunk latest bunk by denier Roy Spencer. Bad week for wrong way Spencer. Climate denial crock of the week. I mean, it goes on and on and on, right? Latest deceit and deception. Pseudoscience. Nazis, shoddy science, and the climate contrarian credibility gap. They wouldn't even say climate denier. Roy Spencer, John Christie. Okay, so, you know, the very idea that the Washington Post is quoting this guy in saying somebody else's work is utter nonsense. I mean, that like, it's like, whoa, like, really? I mean, talk about shooting yourself in the foot. And just to be clear, people have asked Stefan Ramsdorf at Potsdam. They've asked Gavin Smith, the head of GIS. They've asked, even Jason Box. All of those people are saying, oh, Beckwith stuff, read the Washington Post article. So they're all basically indirectly saying, yeah, Roy's right in this case. Let's, rather than write anything else, or comment on it themselves. That's sort of an easy way out, I guess. And then they talk about Jennifer Francis. Now, she's done great work on the jet streams. The Arctic is warming. It lowers the temperature gradient to the equator. The polar jet stream gets very, very wavy. And now, as far as that's her bread and butter, polar jet streams. She doesn't talk about the subtropical. So here she says, I'd say cross-equator flow cannot be unprecedented. Okay, well, it's not. We know that. Maybe not even that unusual. But she's saying maybe. Like, this isn't her specialty. So when you ask a specialist, anything that they haven't specifically studied, they're usually not willing to give an opinion, but she did in this case. But let's have a look. I have one big question here. Let me just open this video. So let me see here. Stop talking. Like, what's going on? I mean, I don't just see two jets here. I see two here, and then I see three here, and then I see two here, and right in this area, there's only one. Like, the jets are fractured and broken up. How can you just speak of a polar jet and not talk about the subtropical jet? And also, what happens when there's no temperature gradient? We lose Arctic sea ice and snow cover. The Arctic is the same temperature as the equator or close to it. Do we have jet streams? Are there weak jet streams determined by, say, a humidity gradient or something? They're certainly going to be spread over and fractured over the entire northern hemisphere, but then they're probably going to be crossing and joining with the southern hemisphere jets, right? This is probably what will happen. So the idea, we're getting more and more and more rapid warming. One would expect there to be connections to the southern hemisphere jets, which is why I, put this video up. So yeah, Jennifer's not convinced. That's fine, but this is not her specialty area. So what else did the Post say? So they quoted Sam, who's working on meteorology, and he was talking about the QBO, quasi-biennial oscillation, and how it's behaving very strange and so on. This is because Scribbler brought it up, but then he's saying, it's probably not related to... it's a separate story. Well, it's a separate story, really? Really a separate story? How can he say this? He's just guessing, right? He doesn't know. He hasn't studied this. He's just, like, when they ask people to, when media call up people and ask them for stuff, like I say, they a lot of times it can be very misleading, the comments. Anyway, unfortunately, the thoroughly specious claims. I claim, okay? I've claimed that we're in a climate emergency because we're losing coral reefs and temperatures are exploding and we have a cold pool south of Greenland. The ocean currents are reconfiguring. CO2 is rising at record rates, all of the above, right? I mean, all of these things. I've been talking about a climate emergency, as you can see in my part 1 of this video, for months and months. Now, this is interesting. Such information viewed through the lens of a non-specialist damages the reputation. This is totally incorrect. This is a total opposite we can't have all specialists, because if we have all specialists, you never get the big picture of what is going on. This is what I am doing. This is what Robert Scribbler is doing. This is what Sam Carana is doing. This is what many other people are doing, right? In order to understand the overall system. I mean, we're playing chess with all the pieces. Specialists are like one pawn on one square of the chessboard. They don't know what's going on the rest of the chessboard. So we need generalists to look at the big picture and to convey to the public the big picture. This is why we're not making headway too much on climate change, because we have way too many specialists. We need more people to look at the climate system. So this is completely opposite. Now, Robert Scribbler, he ended up having a statement. They kind of scared him a bit, I guess. He rewrote some things, and, he wrote a little statement at the end. Talked about climate skeptic Roy Spencer and so on. Climate skeptic, I mean, that's the wrong term, skeptic. Denier is the proper term. And, he does emphasize the Earth system is telling us it's what it's telling us is very worrying, very concerning, very risky. So, let's go now to mainstream media for just a little bit here. Okay, is the Post an exemplary publication to carry climate science? Well, let's see. They interviewed couple meteorologists. They interviewed somebody who really knows what's going on with the jet stream waviness, so that was good, Jennifer Francis. And they interviewed climate change denier. Well, let's look at the meteorologists, okay? Here we go from a couple of years ago, 4 years ago. Shock poll, meteorologists are global warming skeptics, and this is in Forbes. Okay, they did a survey, and they found that most meteorologists denied most of them believed global warming was happening, but only a minority were very worried about it. They wouldn't mention it typically in reporting to the public. Only a modest majority, 59%, believe humans are the primary cause. Okay, so substantially fewer than half were very worried about it or expected substantial harm during the next 100 years. Okay, and there's other stuff here. So, meteorologists were, for the most part, many of them were climate deniers. The American Meteorological Society wrote some information on, they wrote sort of an overall recommendation to governments, or an overall statement on climate change. And apparently the survey of the scientists making up the organization did not back up that statement. Okay, so this is all, this is there. And then what happened? Well, more recently, there's a growing consensus among meteorologists. So, extreme weather events are taking off, but still, most meteorologists do not, when there's extreme weather events, they do not talk about climate change. But this is starting to change. And there were surveys and polls and stuff. One of the things was that not all members of the AMS are meteorologists, and there's other things here. But the survey basically found, okay, so, the meteorologists are starting to come around. Almost 20% of meteorologists say their opinion on climate's changed over the last 5 years. So that's only 1 in 5 have changed. So, what about the rest, right? So, this is how science works. As the evidence becomes more irrefutable, more scientists of all types will become convinced. Well, we can't wait forever, okay? Where do we, when will we get enough to get the action? Now, in terms of the media now, is the Washington Post a stellar organization for reporting such stories? And apparently not. The U.S. mainstream media, this is from last year, their criminal climate coverage, according to Tom Hartman. Given what we know about global warming, it's hard to see the mainstream media's coverage or lack thereof of climate change as anything less than morally and ethically criminal. And there's actually quite a bit in this piece here on the Washington Post and how they got rid of their environmental reporter and switched him over to something else, and how the story,